Hello, everyone. Thank you for showing up to the WordPress security Q&A. Now, if you guys will put your name in the chat and tell me where you're from so I can get an idea of who is here right now. And now, just keep in mind when you are asking your questions, they do not have to be iThemes security related. They can be general WordPress security questions, and I am here and happy to help you in any way that I can. All right, we got someone from Vancouver here. Thank you for showing up. All right. Does anyone have any specific questions they can think of right now related to iThemes security? Well, until we get some questions rolling in, I'm just going to talk about some things that you can do on your site to improve the security. Some very simple things. Like one of the simplest things that you can do to secure your site is to make sure you're using a strong password. Now, even though 91% of people who are polled said they understand and they know that using a unique password on every single site is important, only 59% of people actually do use a unique password for every single site. So what you can do is use a password manager like LastPass. What this will allow you to do is to generate a unique password for every site, and it is going to store it for you so you don't have to remember it. Because what ends up happening is us as humans, we're hardwired to take the path of least resistance. So a lot of us are guilty of finding one strong password that we think is secure, and then we use it everywhere. And even though it is a secure password, it passes all the different metrics that people use for their password strength meters. Unfortunately, if your email address and password is involved in a database dump, guess what? Everyone now is going to have access to your credentials. That's one of the reasons why we incorporated the Troy Hunt's Have I Been Pwned API into iThemes Security, the pro version. And what that does is anytime someone goes to create a new password, it's going to compare the credentials using their API. We're going to send them a hash version of it, so an encrypted version, and it's going to compare it with the database of leaked passwords they have stored in their API. And then if there is a match, guess what? We're going to say, no, you can't use that password. This is a compromised password. And that's great for two reasons. The first reason is it's going to protect and secure your site, and you're not going to allow a user on your site to create a security hole. The second reason why it's great is that that person may not know that their credentials have been part of a database dump, that they're leaked and everyone has access to them. So you are informing them, hey, guess what? These passwords have been compromised. You need to update your credentials. And that way they can go throughout their different accounts, their important accounts, and create more secure credentials. Another thing that you can do when to secure your site, a simple thing, is using two-factor authentication. Because what this does, let's say your admin user does have their email address and password involved in a database dump. What you can do is incorporate two-factor authentication, which requires a second form of authentication to prove your identity. Now, this can be done either via email, SMS, mobile app. Using iThemes Security Pro, you can use the mobile app method and the email. And so what this does, so someone has those credentials, they go over to the site, they put them in, great, login success. Oh, wait, there's another layer of security there that's going to protect you. Because now they have to have a physical device or access to the email account to actually get that second code to log in. Now, another real easy thing that you can do to help secure your site is keep everything updated. As you have seen lately in any of the WordPress security news, there's been a multitude of plugins that have been compromised. So even if you practice all the WordPress security best practices, unfortunately, you may have installed a vulnerability just using a legitimate plugin. Like we've heard about with social warfare, they had yet another vulnerability in their plugin. WPML, a very respected plugin, along with the WooCommerce. When those two were put together and they were allowed to do SQL injections, like well-respected plugins, unfortunately, People are constantly prodding these plugins looking for security holes. But what you can do is to make sure you are keeping your plugins up to date. That way, the security holes are getting patched. Now, an example I like to use often is Equifax. When they got hacked and lost millions of people's data and lost people's trust, the amount of regulation that they may be facing in the future because of that was all due to them using an outdated version of Apache. I remember Chris, one of our lead developers at iThemes, was blazing the alarms and letting everyone know there's a huge vulnerability in Apache. Everyone update, make sure you update, make sure you update. And we're a small shop, and we made sure that we took care of it. But they decided to put off and delay the update. And 3 months after the patch that the hackers used, the vulnerability exploit that had been patched for 3 months, 3 months later, Equifax is breached. Now, they have no excuse because they should have kept their site updated. Now, the majority of actual compromised sites are through outdated software because people aren't paying attention because you're busy. I understand that you're busy. You have a lot of things going on beyond managing your WordPress site, especially the security of the site. So you can use the version management feature in iThemes Security, which will automatically, and anytime an update comes out, you can automatically update your site to make sure you're secure. You can also do that on your own by scheduling an update routine. So on this day, every single week, I'm going to make sure that I stay updated on my site. Now, some other things you can do is to help limit or mitigate the risk of your site being compromised. And before I continue my thought, feel free to ask any questions that you might have, and I can even readdress some things I've already covered if you need me to. But another way you can mitigate the risk of an attack on your site being successful is by limiting the number of exploits you have on your site, by limiting the number of plugins and themes. So if you have plugins and themes that are either redundant or you just aren't using, get them out of there. And the reason why you want to get them out of there is just like we've been talking about. If there is a vulnerability in the plugin, they can exploit it, even if you're not using it. So it's just, if you're not using it, it's just important to give the more code that you have on your site, the more opportunities an attacker will have to exploit your site. And once people know about an exploit for a particular plugin that you have installed on your site, you pretty much are giving them a blueprint on how to get in. So keep that in mind. Also, when you're looking at your plugins, look at the last time it was updated. If it's been 6 months or more, it may have been abandoned. Now, this doesn't necessarily mean it's been abandoned. It could just mean that the plugin itself is feature complete and the developers are only going to update it when they're to keep it compatible with the latest versions of PHP and WordPress. But a plugin that hasn't been updated could be a sign of it being abandoned. Once a plugin is abandoned, it's no longer getting any more security patches or security updates. So again, it's just a good idea to keep track of everything you have on your site to limit the number of exploits. Now, another thing you can think about doing is limiting the amount of privileged users you have on your site. Now, me personally, I know anytime iThemes gives me permission for anything that I no longer need to, I'm like, hey, please take me off. I don't want to be culpable or responsible for anything. So let's go ahead and I don't need it. Let's get rid of my access to it. So if you have someone who goes in and just is creating articles on your site, they might need editor privileges, but they probably don't need admin privileges. So limiting the privileges to the exact amount that the user needs. Another thing is getting rid of inactive admin users, because if it's a user that's just been forgotten about, it just gives another opportunity for an attacker to exploit a user that's not being used. And if that user is doing suspicious activity, it's going to be harder to keep track of because no one's using it. Another thing you can do is make sure you're monitoring and logging important and specific activities. For example, iThemes Security has a user logging feature. So you can see the time of day when people are logging in, when they're logging out. What are they doing once they log in? Are they activating, deactivating plugins? Are they editing or changing, adding posts and articles that they shouldn't be? These are, if you do notice that activity, it could be a sign that your site has been compromised. Another idea for you to do, if you aren't currently backing up your site, make sure you're doing that. One, if for whatever reason I know I have been guilty going above and beyond my current skill set, trying to make changes to my site and then destroying my site, to be frank. And so, but since I have Backup Buddy, I can just quickly roll back. Not to mention, if you do notice some suspicious activity when you're auditing your user logs, you can see when the suspicious activity started, roll back to the point before then, so you know exactly when you need to roll back to. And then once you roll back and you identified that, hey, this user was exploited, guess what? You can either remove the user or update the credentials. That way, the person who was able to gain access to your site no longer has access. And some other things you can think about when you're trying to secure your site is what kind of password strategy do you have for your site? Are you forcing people to use strong passwords? Are you rejecting compromised passwords? Um, um, and one thing I was talking about yesterday is, it's probably been a couple years ago. I had a ticket coming from iThemes support where they actually purchased a version of iThemes Security that wasn't actually sold by iThemes Security, but they thought we were partners with them. So they installed it, and guess what? That version of iThemes Security that they paid for, they had modified the code and added malware to it. So they paid to what they thought they were securing their site with a version of the R plugin that was bought on the black market. They didn't know it was the black market. The site made it look like it was legitimate, and they paid for it, installed it, and when they went to secure their site, they were actually making it more vulnerable because that plugin had been modified with malware. So all that to say, make sure you're installing plugins from trusted sources. Now, the way I think about this is the two different mentalities of the popular cell phone operating systems. There's the Android way, which is like, hey, guess what? We're going to give you access to everything. You want to sideload plugins, you want to install plugins via your mobile browser, we're going to allow you to do that. And then Apple, they limit you to installing plugins from the App Store that they have more control over that ecosystem, so it's harder to get vulnerability in there. So when you hear all this news that Apple is a much more secure device than Android, and X amount of percentage of Android phones have been hacked compared to a much lower percentage of iOS phones, the real reason for that is these people who are installing outside the Google Play Store are actually installing malware on their phone. They're trying to get what appears to be a better deal somewhere else, installing from an untrusted source, adding malware to their site. Because the truth of the matter is, the number one security vulnerability of WordPress is us. Because we're human, we're going to make mistakes. And for a lot of people, WordPress security can be very intimidating, but it doesn't have to be. That is why our help center, we are working on trying to get our documentation updated there. And we're going to continue working on adding more reasonable and actionable steps that people can take to secure their site. And you will also see that we recently reopened this YouTube channel, the iThemes YouTube channel, and we are putting more and more of our effort and time into creating tutorials people can actually use. We want to demystify WordPress security for you and be your go-to source. How can I, as someone who doesn't even have the time to spend all my time on iThemes security, secure my site without needing an extensive knowledge of PhD in web security or without requiring a bunch of time. So our goal is to support you, the iThemes community, and giving you what you need, whether it be education and information. So please, my email address, I'm going to share it right here, is and more at iThemes.com. And I've been trying to give this out more. That way, people can give us um, their perception of what we aren't giving them. So if there's a particular skill gap that you want to be closed, we want to be there to help you out for that. That's why um, uh, Kristen, our head of training, she is really thinking outside the box this year to take our training to a new level. We have both premium and then we have free, and then we're trying to serve both of those means of education to give people useful information that can help them with all things WordPress. Now, the great thing about uh, WordPress is that it makes things so simple. It makes everyone can contribute. You can. There's very little restrictions and limitations holding someone back from adding a plugin to like the .org repo. But unfortunately, with the requirements being low, it doesn't. People who have the best intentions in the world uploading a plugin, hoping to help out the WordPress community, they want to give back to something that's given so much to them, but they don't have the security knowledge. Unfortunately, they install an exploit. So the low barrier of entry when it comes to WordPress, and that also comes with creating a WordPress site, there is what people often refer to themselves as like, I'm not a techie. I'm not a techie. And we're trying to take the jargon and everything out of there and just make it simple, actionable things that you guys can do to make your sites better, manage your clients easier. And the great thing about when people take a proactive effort in securing their site, because whether we like it or not, WordPress, people who aren't involved in it daily, they have this perception that WordPress isn't secure. That frankly isn't true. We since with the low barrier entry, us users, a lot of times we make our sites insecure. So just like I was talking about the Android versus Apple, Android really isn't that much insecure. It's just people have more freedom and flexibility. The barrier of entry to put that virus or exploit on your site is easier. So when people are taking a proactive approach and securing their site and making sure that they're doing everything that they can do to prevent a successful attack, what that is going to do is raise the reputation of WordPress as being a secure platform that you can trust to for your e-commerce store, for your blog, for your nonprofit, that as the platform of choice. And the more popular WordPress becomes, and the more people use WordPress, that means more opportunities for all of us. And whether you are managing someone's site, you're a small business owner, you have a plugin shop, you sell a maintenance package, whatever it is, it's going to be more opportunities for all of us. So any of you who are currently here right now, that means you're interested in securing your site. And so I just want to thank you for really helping make our community better and give it a better reputation of being a secure platform for everyone. So some more simple tips for you to secure your site is by default, WordPress doesn't monitor login activity. And the most common type of attack is a brute force attack. And what a brute force attack is just a random attack that is randomly trying to guess usernames and passwords using common username and passwords to log into your site. You can do a quick Google search and you can download a zip of the most common WordPress passwords. And then you just couple that with common usernames and you just send out a bot and try them everywhere. As far as building a script that will do that and have bots to scour the internet looking for a WordPress site to brute force, it's pretty simple. But let's say that you want to take the time to write it yourself. There is literally hundreds of different free plugins that I've already made for you that you can use, that you set up click go, and then it's going out and it's trying this common username and password. So what you want to do is limit the login attempts, failed login attempts on your site using iThemes Security, either the free version or pro version. Using the local brute force protection settings, you can limit the number of login attempts that both a user and a host can make. So by default, the number of invalid login attempts for a host or an IP address is going to be 10. And the number of invalid login attempts for a user is going to be, IP is always 5, invalid login attempts for a user will be 10. And the reason why these numbers differ is because we are hoping to block and lock out the IP who's using your username before they have a chance to get your username locked out. That way you will still be able to log into your site, even if your username is being used in a brute force attack. But unfortunately, some of these brute force attacks are coming from a bot network, which means there's going to be a series of different bots attacking one site using multiple different IP addresses. So you might go in and say, you try to log in and you see the iThemes security warning. Oh, wait, hold on. You've been locked out for too many invalid login attempts. Timeout, timeout, timeout. You can't. Do not pass go. Do not enter. But using iThemes Security Pro, Timothy came out with the Timothy's the iThemes security developer. He came out with the magic links feature. And what that does is your username is locked out. Guess what? You're going to have an opportunity to get an email that's going to provide a link to bypass the lockout, because the last thing we want security to do is to prevent you from actually doing your job. So even if you do get locked out, you're going to receive that in your email address, click that link, and you're going to go in and get to do your work the way, get your job done. I did a webinar yesterday, and one of the questions in there is like, hey, what should I do when I'm under a brute force attack? I'm getting all these notifications. I'm like, well, first of all, I'm going to assume you're using two-factor authentication and a strong password already. And then, since I'm assuming you're already doing that, because that's the two greatest ways to secure your login is strong password and two-factor authentication, I just showed them how to disable the individual lockout notifications. Because the great thing about it is, if you're using a WordPress security plugin, you don't have to do anything. There's no action for you to take because your site's automatically being secure with no effort by you. So the reason why I recommend disabling the individual lockout notifications is there's nothing you need to do about it. It's already being taken care of. So then enabling the security digest, so you can get a summary of either daily or weekly of how many attacks have been blocked and stopped. So that's both using the free version and the pro version. You can limit the number of login attempts to prevent a brute force attack, because there is absolutely no excuse in 2019 that someone should be able to successfully brute force your site, because you should be using strong passwords and two-factor authentication. Because even if they do have the correct credentials and you have two-factor authentication enabled, they're going to need a second form of identification that they don't have. Because the three main categories of two-factor is going to be something you know. So oftentimes it'll be a security question. So, what was your mother's maiden name? The second type is a physical device. So that's either going to be like a mobile phone using a mobile app, or one of those YubiKeys, little USB stick security keys. And then the third type is going to be something you are, biometric, a specific characteristic to you. So anytime you use a fingerprint scanner on a phone or Face ID, you're unlocking your phone using biometrics, using the something you are. So all that to say that can't be replicated. So even if they have their username and password, that can't be replicated. Okay, so another thing we have to do before we get out of here is we have the giveaway for a free one-time subscription to iThemes Security Pro. Hopefully I can give it away to someone who has registered and is already here. I looked at this earlier in the using a random number. I was able to pick engraveddominoes@gmail.com. Are you here right now? The person with anyone has the engraveddominoes@gmail.com? All right, tell me who is here, because I would really like to give away the free subscription to someone that is actually here, and that way we can get your information. And because I appreciate everyone who has shown up today. Oh, you may be under other email. What email would you have? Okay, if you'll share your email address with me, because I do appreciate everyone who showed up today. It's again, we are trying to get this YouTube channel to be a tool for you. So again, I shared that email address earlier. So if there's any tutorials or any subjects you want us to talk about, we are creating this for you, our community, and the WordPress community to make things easier. Like this stuff doesn't have to be hard. This stuff doesn't have to be intimidating. It doesn't have to be complicated. And we are have the privilege of working on some of this stuff full time that you guys don't have the opportunity to. So we can we get to spend our time to learn this stuff when you don't need to. So we get to do deep dives, and that's why we want to help. Oh, did you use the engraved dominoes at Gmail to? Because if that is the case, if you use the engraved dominoes at gmail.com, then you would be the winner of the free iThemes Security Pro one site subscription, which gives you access to two-factor authentication, the trusted device feature, scheduled malware scans, the version management auto update feature, just a bunch of great additional tools that accompany the free features to take your security to the next level. But if you just give me a yes or no, and if that's your email address, I'll make sure we get. Oh, what? Like you're the only one talking in chat, so I want to give you. I want you to be the winner. So give me your email address, and then I'm going to make you the winner. Let's turn that frown upside down. It's going to be a good day because you just won. And Rebecca will be happy about it. She is joining me in iThemes Security support starting today, and she is she is Canadian too. And so when I get to tell her that we gave it away to Canadian, that's going to make her happy, which will make me happy. So it's going to be a win-win all around. All right. Well, I'm just going to wait on Kay to give us that email address, and then we're going to get that sent out to the one site subscription sent out to them. But again, I want to thank everyone who did show up today to show up, and please use that email address to tell us what resources you want to see. How can we better serve you? How can we give you the information you need to make WordPress easier and less painless for you? Oh, that you registered. I saw that on in there. I already have your email address. So guess what? I'm going to um, send you the information that you need before the end of the day to get to take advantage of your free iThemes Security Pro one site subscription. So congratulations and thank you so much for showing up. And I appreciate everyone for showing up today. But it's going to be time to wrap this up. But again, don't before I wrap up, I should tell you that we are currently running a sale to the end of the month on iThemes Security Pro, 35% off of iThemes Security Pro, and that includes the plugin suite, and they're selling that toolkit things that include Security Pro. You can use coupon code ITSEC35. I'm going to put that in chat for you in case anyone needs to copy and paste that. All right, and thank you guys so much. Have a great day. And again, let us know how we can best serve you.